if possible, while we wait for Sui Meng in that room doing something. So hello, I'm Shazwan. How many of you guys are your first? Hi, Sui Meng. Finish? First timer? Wow. Okay. Nice. So the first timers, any among you doing DevOps at work? One, two. Right. So learning then, getting to know. Good. So Wendy, you can join me. This is Wendy, my also one of the organizers. So usually with this meetup, this DevOps meetup is a monthly meetup. Usually it's here, but not necessarily. Next week it might be at Maxis Academy, Plaza Central. And the format, usually we do two talks, 20 minutes, and one bus corner, which we are about to do. Bus corner we'll explain later. So I'll just be pressing next. Chilean, can you check if I have focus? I cannot go next. Right, so who we are? We are volunteers. None of us get paid to do this. We hang around engineers my Slack. Feel free to join us. Volunteer next time. And the meetup, we announced we prefer meetup.com. I believe most of you also came from RSVP there. We also publish, Sam publish on Facebook, but usually we have less than 10 response there. So feel free to Slack in the meetups channel. Just say you want to speak or share something for the next meetup. Or one of the organizers will get in touch with you. We really encourage this.
So there's a lot of meetups coming up in the coming 2 weeks. There are a couple of places where you can find meetups. You can go to the groups themselves, or you can go to like combined lists. For instance, DevCami is a place where we curate most of the groups that we know of in KL, those community organized groups, again, people who don't get paid. So you can go to devcami.com/meetups for the curated list, or you can go to Azwan's Heroku app engine list. That one is a calendar list with a larger, more unfiltered tech list.
Right, some simple house rules, typical minimal backshading. Backshading means let's not argue too much about the little stuff, like what is better, Vim or Visual Studio Code. The answer is Vim. No, it's Vim. It's Vim. No, it's Vim. No, it's Vim. Right. Keep that to minimum. And then participate. Feel free to interrupt us, ask questions and stuff. Hey, Ash. Respect opinions, agree to disagree, simple stuff, common sense, but sometimes people forget about it. And please thank the venue sponsors, the speakers first, for volunteering their time and knowledge. Right, so the bus corner.
So we'll go through all the meetups that are coming up in the next few weeks. So the first up this Saturday is notoriously packed with events. I think there are more than 5, so you're really spoiled for choice here. So there's Speaking Up Tech, organized by Women Who Code KL, Angular Malaysia, and GDG KL. So this is an event where you can learn how to speak at conferences or meetups like this, learn how to be more vocal.
One of the panels will be Tiru, right? Am I right? Yes. You wanna comment about this meetup?
Hi guys, so my name is Tiru. I'll be one of the panelists for this weekend's event, and so the intention of that event is actually to promote the speaker culture. So we are trying to get and cultivate speakers from around the community to talk about a variety of technical topics. So if any of you have the invite, or if you are registered to go, please don't fail to attend, because hopefully it should be a good event. Right, thanks.
Second topic is on how to pitch an idea to your boss. So if you have an idea and you feel like you don't know how to take it to your boss, we have a panel session about that. You can ask the people about it. Next up is Python 105. This one is also organized by Women Who Code KL. It's Chim's fifth installment in the Python series. So this time they're going to be doing advanced OOP. If you've been following, I think you can catch up with 105 pretty fast. If not, if you have basic OOP concepts and you like to learn some Python, this is for you as well. As a mentor, right? So you're in good hands. Next up is React Workshop by Malcolm. I don't know if you see it. Yeah, so Malcolm, he had a React. This is by Malcolm, right? He had a workshop last month, and he's going to continue this, continue the concepts of React this time, this month as well. Junior Dev is a new group. Is the organizer here? Okay.
Steven, no.
Steven? No.
Nope.
So this is Junior Dev is like a global group that encourages, like, it's tailored for junior developers lah. And Malaysia's chapter just opened recently, and they're having their first event next Tuesday. So yeah. KLJS the very next day is having their first meetup of 2019. And TensorFlow and deep learning, if you're into AI, the next day you can go and join them as well. Elixir on 1st March is, I think, Friday. Yeah, the Elixir group. Anyone from Elixir here? No? Well, you can go join them to find out what they do.
All right. So this is basically the buzz corner. We buzz through. Buzz here is defined by not necessarily something new, but something that is buzzing or making rounds, especially among our Slack engineers, my Slack groups. So usually it's something new, but not necessarily. And we group them by topics. So the first would be AWS backup. How many of you use AWS here? How do you do backups? Scripts manually. So AWS, they launched this new service, backup, which basically will use the individual service snapshotting feature, but you have a central place to manage now. Unfortunately, for now, it only supports like these services: EBS, RDS databases except Aurora, MySQL, Dynamo Tables, EFS, file system, and more to come. And more sad news, no APAC region support yet, just these four for now. And like I said, backup uses the existing snapshot operations. Like instead you go to the Dynamo dashboard and manually backup that. This you have a central place to monitor your backups and manage them. And then somebody shared Cloudcraft. Who was it? No. So this is I'm pretty sure most of you AWS users know about this already, right? Yeah, it's a popular. So you can give it access key of your AWS account, and it can automatically generate diagrams for you of your AWS account, what resource you have. You can add and remove what you don't want to be included, and it also does budgeting. Like you can select in group, and then it will tell you monthly budget, how much it will cost and stuff. Pretty cool. And it's not new, it's really old. Yes, sir.
So if you go back to the previous slide, right? Does it generate Cloudformation templates?
Cloudformation, I don't think so.
Okay, so it's like visualization.
Yes. It's a visualization of your architecture. And this is something shared by Chi Leong. So we have a recurring meme here that serverless AWS Lambda is expensive. So this guy basically says, no, it depends. Chi Leong, you want to comment on this?
No, I didn't read it.
Okay, so he shared it, but he didn't read it. Anyone else? So the main takeaway is that he says it depends on your work type. He focuses around ML, machine learning. He showed a case study where financial engines, like his company, Uber, which is now no more, but they disbanded their DevOps team after they migrated to serverless, because the responsibility now, a lot of it moves to developers. No, they don't really need their DevOps team, and it was disbanded. And financial engines cut their cost by 90%, which is a lot after they move. So it depends. We have Ivan here is just very strong serverless, advocator. Yeah. So he also said to look at TCO, which is total cost of ownership, instead of just cost. There's a nice diagram here. Yeah, so I hope you guys can see it. But, he says the business only care about time to market, and your budget is mostly spent on engineers and your developers, your staff. And what we can easily measure are the like server costs, networking, storage, and this thing that you can optimize by going to serverless and cut costs there. By moving the ownership, the responsibility to developers more, you also cut costs here, like his company that disbanded their DevOps team. Sounds not good, right? But Manju, where's Manju? No. Han also not here. Manju shared about who used Apex before for serverless. Ivan. So can you talk about Up? What is it?
Up is something like they make it very simple. They just give you a command, up deploy, then you just deploy everything. And then they put the files inside like settings, up settings.
What language?
Last time I checked, their main language is Go, because they are up is written in Go. And then last time I checked that they support Python and JavaScript, Go. Now I'm not sure whether they support the new. Last time when I was using it, they don't support Python 3, so we didn't use it.
Alright, so that's why there is no specific mention of language here. They try to be language agnostic.
They have Up have their own. Last time I remember, they have their own like layer. They have their own layer there. From what I remember, they have their own layer. Instead of directly using the run the function, they have their own layer, thin layer there.
Would it be a good thing to start serverless with?
Up makes it fast. I think easier than compared to the serverless framework. It will be easier as compared to serverless. Faster, just up deploy. But then there's a thin layer between.
Alright, so try it, guys. Only for AWS. For now or forever? Okay. And then Kubernetes. Anyone here use Kubernetes for work? Right? That's what I thought. How about locally for development to play around?
I use Kubernetes for work. My advice is don't use it. Unless you know what you're doing, because you actually need to, it's actually not a way for you to avoid deploying on traditional server. You actually need to have a really good foundation on how servers work and how to tweak certain settings to make sure it works nicely. So, yeah, it's not something that came for free. But if you know what you're doing, which we don't, they'll fight you back sometimes. The price is just losing sleep for days.
Do you guys host it on AWS or Google or on your own?
No, we have a hybrid. We build our own hybrid cloud because of the sensitivity of certain things that we do. Let's just put it this way, I can say this, certain part of Malaysian government runs Kubernetes.
Wow.
And Golang.
So if you play around locally with Kubernetes, Tilt will help you. It's think like a Docker file or Docker Compose. It's a way for you to share with fellow developers, your the setup. It has its benefits. Yeah, it's basically Docker build and Docker Compose up. Similar thing, but it's not YAML. I think it's Starlark, the Python, right? No, it's a Python flavor thingy. Now, who shared this? Sam, yeah. What do you want to share about it?
Yeah, anyway, this is just Etsy. Etsy is a craft startup in the US. So this is just an article, their blog, where they're just sharing how they're using all these tools, Terraform, Helm, to deploy to Kubernetes. Yeah.
Anything interesting?
Nothing in particular. So this article just goes in details what they did, their script, what was the solution, how they went about solving some of the issues, like whether custom create certain dashboards and stuff like that. Yeah.
Thanks. And this is nice, Kubernetes failure stories. Somebody collected the real stories. Chilyong, maybe you want to contribute as well. You can go here and read up the stories, and
You can add your list as well. If you had any like Kubernetes failure stories, you can put it in there so that people read your failure and don't do the same things.
right. On to Docker. So Alpine 3.9 was released. Who uses Alpine? Yeah, everybody loves Alpine, right? Except me. Like 88 issues was closed from previous version. And then, yes, basically Docker Hub removes a few images related to Oracle. Anybody knows about this more? Can share why?
So basically, they removed anything that related to the Docker Oracle database that is on Docker Hub. So
I think the main question I should ask is who uses Oracle first. Yeah.
it's one of the clients.
Yeah.
And Oracle actually, in order to compile, depends on
So the lesson here is not specific to the technology, but don't rely on a third-party registry or repo to host your production stuff.
Now the news for the Okay, Alpine 3.9, right? The release. Something to note is that they removed Firefox. Yeah, they are still fixing it. They don't fix it in the GitHub issue. This one is referring to the GitHub issues, right?
Yes.
They have another patchwork called patchwork.alpinelinux.org for their development. So basically, it's through email. They send patches through email. Sometimes GitHub will take faster, but usually, if people you send, a lot of them are through the email and through mailing list. So one of the issue they face is they remove Firefox because Rust doesn't compile on ARM. They remove Firefox on ARM, not on x86. Yeah, just a note.
So Ivan is also into Rust. He's one of the Rust meetup organizers. I have big issues with Alpine, but in the interest of time, yeah.
I want to know what your issues were.
Oh.
Can you do that as your talk later instead of talking?
Or I just share the link to my blog article about it. Yeah, back to this. So the lesson is, make sure you can build your product, compile your stuff without internet, basically, or like Han says, everywhere, vendor everything. Now on to DB. I believe Ash, you shared about TiDB. Yeah, want to tell us about it? Not really. It's about new SQL. I think it's new term to many.
Again, it's a buzzword, I think. What I thought was interesting was they're saying they can guarantee asset while also being distributed. So there are a couple of databases that do that. NewSQL is a term that came 2 years ago because people wanted asset when NoSQL started coming in. One asset transaction apparently. So OldDB is another one. But this is just distributed out of nodes. If the price of throughput, probably. You always hit the cap here. I sort of went into like a rabbit hole reading all of the papers, previous writing about this.
It's from Uber, right? It's from Uber or PingCap, yes, PingCap. They said it's useful to them mostly in games like that, right? I think so. This one is from Uber, RSDB. Anyone can tell us about it? No, late last year was released, pretty new, GPU powered analytics engine. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about this because I haven't tried it. It's really new. I was hoping someone. Let's skip this. And on to CI bus. Travis joins Idera. I don't know if it means anything significant to you users. A lot of you, I guess, use Travis. No?
Does anyone know what IDERA does, actually? So IDERA is a place where all old software is behind. Yeah, a lot of old apps like that. Borland and all has gone there. If anyone remembers Borland, you're as old as me. IDERA buys them off. So Travis apparently had some issues. They're not able to scale their business. Circle CI is eating them up, and other companies are picking them up, and GitLab and all that is coming in. So Travis, in the end, had to do an exit, and they.
So if you guys don't use Travis, what do you use? Circle CI? And
who uses Azure here? One person, two people.
3.
We're actually moving on. So yeah.
What were your experiences using their pipeline? Is it good?
It's okay. Actually, we are still new using this one. We're only exploring for, I think, a few weeks. I think so far okay. I'll find somebody to talk about it.
Not too late to change your mind. It's only a few weeks.
So this guy, like he had a lot of frustrations using pipeline. I think he's been using it for a while, so he documented all of the things that may, if you feel like it's very frustrating, he'll tell you. He outlined a few things that maybe you can avoid, but he also, like, I think he's would advise against it.
This one shared by Tevan, but he's not here. So Basil Bill, I have no idea what it is.
It's a build system. If you happen to use TensorFlow, you will build with it. You need it to build TensorFlow. Yeah, which is annoying, but it is what it is, lah. And it's actually very well suited for monorepos, because the problem with monorepos is it's because like when you build system, it's dynamically listening to changes in the repo. If you have an update, you just review everything. So Bazel actually offers you like option to read for changes and build only parts that you require together. But it's very complicated setup. It has both DSL also. So yeah, powerful, but the learning curve is a bit simpler as well. Very suited for huge monorepo.
Yeah, so a couple days ago, GitHub released draft PR. So besides the normal PR, you can create draft PRs that have to be approved first before it can be merged. So anything that you want to just like show your teammates that it's a work in progress, it's not set in stone yet, you can use this new feature.
What's the difference with this and GitLab's WIP merge request, pull request?
I don't know, I don't use GitLab.
GitHub is not enforced. You can merge work in progress. I believe you can. Because it happened in my work.
GitLab will block.
GitHub.
So Streamer is saying that GitHub doesn't enforce anything, so it's just a label or something.
No, currently it's a label, this is Hussein.
Oh, okay.
Previously it's not, it's just like... You want to talk about it next month? No! I talk too much. Everyone loves you today. I love you guys too. Question, why would you open a PR if you're not ready to have it review that? Not necessarily, actually. I've published drafts before as a means to demonstrate work in progress, sort of. I mean, WIP is the best example, work in progress, especially if it's a large project. Right? Or you want to send like, hey, can somebody quickly take a look at this? And wouldn't that be just asking them to go to that branch? Yeah, currently it's not enforced, so you can just tell them. Well, yeah, the discussion. Yeah. And they can go to the branch, but then it's like an automatic rolling compare. You can actually have like the GitHub tools to do your code review, all of the discussions are there. So everything is all rolling through them. Right. So before this used to happen, so the way we would do things is you open, because you can't open a PR with your branch is exactly the same as the branch you're coming from, right? So you have like a commit, like a small thing, like I'm starting this thing, for example, just so that you can start a PR, and then everybody happens there, right? But this just takes care of that initial trial commit.
Right. Next on Tweak, shared by Manju, open source feature management. So if you do some sort of strangler pattern or its friends, then I guess you will be using this. Anyone use feature management to transform your monolithic apps to microservices or something?
Custom.
What do you use? Not
Custom.
Nothing much. And then Sui Meng shared this, the practical Linux hardening guide. should we ask him to comment?
Disclaimer, never practice it, just sound cool.
No, I guess it's some idea about improving our existing processes on security. Chances is it's actually very hard to actually secure this system. These get it a bit better, so they have some idea on how to make it better along the way.
Okay. And Citus? Anyone use Citus? We used to use, but we migrated away from Citus late last year. So yeah, Microsoft acquired Citus, good for them. It's Postgres, but distributed. It's free, but you can use they provide a hosted Citus, so you have a fancy web console, for scaling, and really good support. Their Slack support is good. Yes, the CTO, Craig, he blogs about Postgres a lot and lots of low-level stuff. He knows his stuff. Yeah, but we had issues with Citus. That's why we dumped Citus. I'm planning to talk about it in probably next 2 months or something. Yeah, because I need to gather I didn't keep the logs of everything, and then Han told me I should talk about it, so now I need to hunt back the logs. And then also shared by Tevin, whatever this is, I don't know, more article. It's an OS, I think, about being ethical and stuff. Anybody knows about it? And then Nginx unit, where Sam, yes, Sam.
Yeah, so Nginx unit is a dynamic web application server. So you can either run it on its own, or you can run it behind Nginx. So I've just recently tried it, but not extensively tested it. You can actually run configurations. The configuration is all in JSON, and you can load changes, everything through, like, calling it through curl. So now it's version 1.7, PHP, Go, JavaScript is supported. I think Java is coming. Java is the next language to be supported. Yeah, so this is free open source. Yeah.
Thanks, Sam. And then it's nothing, just a website for you if you are hunting for a barebone server or cheap VPS, because we get this question a lot, right? In groups, like someone asks, what is a cheaper server with these constraints and that constraint? So on this website, you can like do all sorts of filtering from cost to hardware type and all. All right, we have like 3 minutes left. I'm going to buzz through this. I will share this slide in the meetup.com. You can just go through them yourself, the article parts. This one is about Grab's experimentation platform data pipeline. If you are into ETL, you'll probably find this interesting. A lot of cool stuff inside. And then chaos engineering at Grab. Can somebody tell me what chaos engineering is? Randomly destroy server. Yeah. So it's to test your robustness, the robustness of your systems. So you can read how Grab does it with their experimentation platform and GrabKit. Yeah. And Wendy, you want to talk about?
Oh, so this article is really good for if you want to know the HTTP 3 protocol, formerly known as HTTP over QUIC, and it'll explain like the history of how how they evolved into what it is and all that. It's a pretty comprehensive article.
So that's it for Buzz. Next up, we have Fuzz from Randstad. He will share his company's journey into DevOps world and the lessons learned. Please ask him a lot of questions.
Oh, please don't. Please don't. Thanks, Shazwan. Thanks, Wendy. If you could just go on full screen. Present. Thanks. Hey, everyone. As long as you're watching the comic, I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Fuzz. I'm a solutions architect at Randstad. For folks who don't know who Randstad is a global staffing and recruitment company. Does anyone know Monster? Right? Yeah, we ate Monster, so we bought them 2 years ago. So yeah, yay. We are one of the biggest staffing and recruitment firms, so I guess that should have caught your attention. Beyond that, we operate in over 35, 40 countries, and we are mapped across different regions. We support APAC, so Asia Pacific supports 5 countries. That's Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, and New Zealand. And this cloud journey kind of maps, it's a globetrot around the region to understand how we move from one place to another. So if the comic's done, I can just show you that everyone thinks that, and I see a lot of startups, I know some of the folks over here, they go cloud first and they're like in happy land, everything's nice. They never had to work with data centers, they never had to migrate things off the racks, they never had to twiddle their thumbs around wires and stuff, and we had to go through a lot of pain, but the end definitely helped us. Right, so journey to the cloud, Randstad edition, right? And I think it's a big achievement. So the way this worked is that where we were before, pre-2016, so standard data center across 2 regions. We had one in Sydney, we had one in Singapore, because as you'll see later, there was one major reason why we had to do it in 2 areas. So standard stuff, we have apps sitting, you have racks, right? Racks and racks of servers, you have databases running somewhere, you have disks, and then you have an array and blah, blah, blah. We have all our apps running. So most of the apps we support is all regarding invoicing and recruitment for candidates and ensuring that candidates get paid on time and beyond that. So we have public apps, we have internal apps which the staff use. Cool. So how did we start on the cloud then, right? So the first idea came up in 2016. This was just before 2015, in fact, just before I joined. And one of the things we did was to show to the management, hey, the cloud's a pretty awesome place, right? We built a POC, right? More than a POC, we actually built an app which was running in production from day one, and we moved it to the cloud, right? We validated what worked for us, what didn't. One of the key points for us to take away from there was that we didn't have to manage any rack servers, we didn't have to provision anything, manually, which right now sounds like duh, but at that time it was still something like people were like, oh, you could actually do it without asking a network sysadmin to go in and do it. And our data center wasn't in our office premises, it was actually downtown in Sydney, I think around 10 kilometers. So if you get stuck in traffic and you have to go to the data center, well, good luck to you. And that's a story that happened kind of pretty later. Not in this slide, maybe some other time if I want to talk about more pain, I'll talk about it. Right, so we validated the methodology, right? We were able to move things in here. Now the difference was that to make this work, what we had to do was we needed to create a VPN, right? We needed to create a VPN to our data center. It'll come later, AWS has a service for that. So the idea was that because we just moved our app server inside, we didn't actually move our database. So our database was still sitting in the data center. And the idea was just to validate it, right? All right, so we went ahead, we showed this worked, we showed the costing, all right, everything's fine. So now how do we move ahead, right? It begins from here. So we said to the company, all right, let's go ahead with this. And because Randstad is a global company, it is not something you can just do like at a region level, we had to take it at a global level. So someone from global had to start pushing it down. And this is where you start seeing how does a global company ensure all the operations and all the centers across the globe are able to move ahead to the cloud, right? So our migration methodology for APAC was pretty straightforward. We had 2 options. We either would go with the waterfall methodology, right? So the idea is that we have to move everything off the data center. Our CEO gave us a timeline. He gave us a pretty straightforward timeline. Guys, I know you guys like the cloud. I know cloud is going to save us money. You got 12 months. So 2017 Jan, this is when we start our journey. And we had 2 options. We could either move our whole app with the app tier and the database tier and everything else that's along with it, or we could go agile, right? Everyone wants to do agile. So we thought, okay, fine. We'll go the iterative way. The idea is that we can at least have quick wins slowly and then formulate and see what works, what doesn't work, and then have a tight feedback loop so that we can take it back to the to whoever's managing the infrastructure, and then take it back to app owners, and take it back to business stakeholders, and then make sure that things work. And just for a know-how, that if you're expecting anything about Docker and containers, there's nothing in that. I'm sorry, we don't use Docker and containers. We're still pure EC2. Other reasons for that, but offline I can talk about that. So we went ahead, right? So we started building. Okay, the first step we went with a web tier, and then the second step we went with an app tier, then the database. Okay, hey, one whole app is in. Next step, repeat, rinse and repeat. Keep on going, keep on moving. And over the course of a year, we had to move, we have around 30 applications which we had to move, which are like crucial. Business as usual had to go on, business has to go on. We can't like just say, okay, fine, for the next 1 week we're doing cloud migration, so nobody touch this app. No, everything had to work on its own. So we had to manage it in such a way that in every iteration, we still are connected to the data center, right? So what we did was we moved our database at the end. We kept everything, we started moving everything that is not a database into the cloud first. And then we took a massive jump where we said, okay, fine, XYZ databases in the next 1 month are going to go to the cloud. That helped us, but of course the costs were high because we had to set up a VPC connection, we had to set up a VPN, and currently, and there was this thing of regions. So Amazon last year introduced VPC peering across regions. It wasn't there when we did it. And we had to use a third-party service, and it was painful. And we had to rely on a telecom provider also to do it. Wasn't easy, believe me. So Amazon's actually like done it after we did it. Great, thanks guys. Right, so Direct Connect, I mentioned Direct Connect. So what Direct Connect gives us is, it gives us a direct lease line inside AWS in the data center in Sydney, directly to our data center, which was in some other part of downtown Sydney. And we also had to connect our Singapore data center also to the same AWS region. Now, for reasons unknown, when our global our COE, as we call it, which is in another slide, it's a center of excellence, they decided, for business reasons and reasons known best to them, for the whole of APAC, Singapore makes sense, right? I don't know why, it could be cost, it could be XYZ, but they said Singapore region makes sense for everyone, right? So the idea was that we would move all our apps, right, into Singapore, from Sydney and from Singapore. All right, fine, everything sounds, I mean, it's just AWS, right? What could go wrong? We'll find out later what actually went wrong. We use Snowball. How many of you have actually touched one of these? We actually use this. This is pretty cool. The problem was I found out very late, or else I would have flown down all the way to Sydney for this. And the way we did this is because, again, we were trying to move our data from Sydney to Singapore. What we did is, I remember the first POC we did, that was in actually another AWS account. And we took Snowball to our data center, and we loaded around 80 terabyte of data into Snowball. And we copied it to our, we drove, literally, apparently, that's what the infrastructure guy told me. We drove all the way to the AWS Sydney center, and then we loaded it into our previous AWS account, and then we implemented cross-region replication across S3. Has anyone done cross-region replication across S3? Yeah, it's pretty cool. But we did this, and we were able to get our data into Singapore, right? Awesome, right? So now we have all our data in Singapore. It took a day or two, but we were able to do it because the problem was we were paying top dollar for our lease line, and we were only able to get 1.5 MB per second as an upload rate, which means it would have taken 2 years just to ship data all the way from Sydney to Singapore. I could have just got a flight and gone. Yeah, so Snowball, yay, works. It's pretty awesome. Right, Cloudformation for everything. We started moving everything to Cloudformation. How many of you guys actually script your infrastructure? And the rest, why don't you do it, right? I mean, the idea is that, and we started pretty early for this. We didn't have any resources in Malaysia even to hire for this. So we learned it on our own. And just another note, we don't have an exclusive DevOps team. Developers actually manage the infrastructure themselves. I know some people don't like that, but yeah, hey, that's how it is. So what we did is we scripted everything. Yep. Yeah, we started with Cloudformation, but what happened is Global later then gave us a direction, said you could use Terraform, but by then we had already finished our migration. So we just thought, okay, fine, let's just step away. But yes, so for our new things, which I'm going to talk about at the end, we are looking at Terraform because we are having a multi-cloud strategy, which I'm going to touch on in the end. So yeah, so everything related to the app, from the load balancer to the EC2 to S3, everything is coded. Anytime it goes down, we can tear down the damn stack and then we can bring it up again. Yeah. No, we wrote it by hand. If you guys really want to learn Cloudformation, I can do a class for it. Seriously, it's not fun. And we have a super awesome dude, Nagan over here, who also scripted our whole website. So we have a website, Randstad.com, which is for 5 regions for job search. If you ever want to search for a job, go there. But that website, the whole infrastructure is managed by one man, and he's there. If you want to know anything more, you can ask him. Thanks, Nagan, for all your help. Right. DynamoDB migration. Again, going back to this one, we had an app which was already running in another AWS account. What we did was, because we were migrating across for global, we actually took a new account and we had AWS organization set up, right? So the point was, global did a global contract with AWS, of course, because Amazon gave us a very, very good deal, right? It was between Amazon and Azure. I won't talk more beyond that because it's NDA. And Google wasn't in this one at all. Sorry. So we had production data already sitting in our previous AWS account. How many of you have actually transferred data from one AWS account to another? Anyone? Anyone? All right, you have. Okay, awesome. So is it DynamoDB or? Sorry? RDS. Oh, all right. So what we did for DynamoDB was, specifically, we had to use EMR. So the only way you could export data from DynamoDB, now it's different. Now they have options. I think they have DynamoDB export as an option. At our time, the only option was we had to spin up an EMR cluster to take a backup, put it into S3, and then we use cross-region replication again from Sydney to Singapore, and then moved it back into Dynamo. That's how we did it in 2017. And it worked. Of course, it took some time, and it took some coordination among 3 people, but it really worked. So, and we used what else did we do for this? Yeah, so I'll come to this a little later. If anyone's interested, you can ask me more about it, because there's something after this slide which actually affected us in all of this. But this worked. This totally worked out of the box, so it's easy to move data. Yeah? No, we didn't have to encrypt it because it was more like business data, but event data. But it was S3 cross-region replication, so it's within the AWS network, right? Why would we want to encrypt it exclusively? Really? Oh, okay, we did use keys. Our infrastructure guy used KMS for encrypting the data. He didn't tell us, but I found out later. So yes, but okay, that's interesting. Curious. Huh? Very painful, yeah, very painful, exactly, I believe that. There was also another thing, if you notice, I kept telling about business as usual, right? So we can never have downtime. So one of the key data structures we used to use in Dynamo is our event pipeline. So all our events are stored inside. So how do you actually migrate data from one region to another, right? And one account to another and make sure that data is still working. The way we did it behind the scenes was that we had our event engine pointing to one DynamoDB, which then pointed to another. So we were hosting it, we copied it, hosted another one, and we used Lambda. DynamoDB stream had come out at that time, which is awesome. And what we did was we planned for failure. What we did was, if anything happened to our EMR cluster export for some weird reason, if it fails or if the data got corrupted, we ensured that business data, which is coming in right now, was captured. So we used DynamoDB stream. We started moving the data. Every new data that came in, there was a copy made into a new table. So we had a delta for the production move, right? So the production window was like 2 hours, 3 hours. During daytime, by the way, we didn't do this during the nighttime. We actually did it during the day because we were so daring about it. We knew it's going to work, right? So we did that, and it worked, right? We were able to replicate all the data, move it back into DynamoDB, load it in an EMR cluster again, and launch it back. We never had to use our backup tables again, which is pretty cool. So DynamoDB migration works. It's just that AWS migration from account to account, just don't do it. You just think it's easy. AWS could just tell you, hey, just connect these 2 accounts behind the scenes and transfer the data, but they don't do that for you because they believe in security. Latency. All right, this is the key factor that came into our picture. So I mentioned about Singapore, right? Everything looks fine, right? It's just Singapore and Sydney. What could go wrong? We started the migration of data. We started moving our stuff into Singapore, right? And if you notice, I told you that we moved our databases at the end, which means till the latter half of 2017 and even till the beginning of 2018, a lot of our databases hadn't moved yet. They were still in the data center, which basically means if you have an app sitting in Singapore, it's hosted in Singapore, and me in Malaysia, I'm pinging the app in Singapore, it's going all the way back to the Sydney data center, right? And then it's pulling data back across the ocean twice, up and down, right? We saw it was a little slow, but we thought, hey, maybe it's the app adjusting to the cloud. Literally, that's what we used to call it. And then this happened. Okay. We got a submarine cable cut. And then it happened again. And then it happened again. 3 times in 6 months. God damn it, what's wrong with you people? Why are you guys cutting our cables, right? And the funny thing was, when this happened, our app became 10 times slow. People started complaining. The business is saying, what's going wrong with you people? I think the cloud migration is a failure. I think you guys shouldn't have gone to the cloud. Data centers are awesome. And we're like, wait, what's going on? What's wrong in all of this, right? And then they found out, apparently, even if the cable cuts were not done, we still had a pretty high latency, which nobody actually noticed initially. So as an architect, what I did was, okay, to prove my point to the infrastructure, I'm like, okay, fine, guys, we know this is a problem. Let's prove it with data. I just took up a rudimentary Excel sheet, and all I did was I just started requesting things and marking down the times in an Excel sheet. That sheet became so important, apparently, Global used that sheet as a reference point for every other project in other regions. I don't know why. They should have just given me something for that. But anyway, that happened. So based on this, we decided we're going to move everything from Singapore to Sydney. Yay! After doing all the migration, after doing all the apps which we built, we had to do a migration again. And we had to move things again. And we were like, all right, we did it the first time, we can do it again. So what helped? Because we moved into Cloudformation, we had scripts in Cloudformation. It was as easy as just running the Cloudformation script. See? So lesson number 1, everyone, please code your infrastructure, right? Because you don't know when a submarine cable will get cut, right? Other tools we used, not everything is there. I just needed a slide to show everything, and then they had this. So we use application discovery, we use server migration. Some of the apps are legacy systems, which we needed to just migrate as is. And database migration service is something we use for a database. We use SQL Server. We don't use RDS. We use it on EC2 because of license costs, because we get a sweet deal on license costs directly, so it's easier for us to host it on EC2. The problem is someone has to manage it, right? It's just fine. We use Snowball. We use Direct Connect. We don't use Kinesis. I'll tell you in a reason why we don't do that. And we used S3 transfer acceleration for moving data across, right, from data center to S3 in general. And our AMIs, we use AMIs, the images which we use, we bake our images with all the tools that are required in the build scripts, so that anytime the app goes down, we can spin up another one, and the AMI has the latest patches and everything else in place. Don't ask me how we do patching. I won't tell you. It's painful. So lessons learned, right? You're doing a global. Let's say somebody calls you from your organization. If you're a global organization, you want to, like, they say, okay, fine, you go to these DevOps meetups a lot. Tell me how to migrate to the cloud. All right, this is how you do. These are the steps. First thing, form a cloud center of excellence, right? The thing with us is right now, because we don't have a DevOps team, we need someone to at least manage and orchestrate the whole thing, right? And tell us, okay, exactly when to do what. So you manage it. Someone has to manage the stakeholders. Somebody has to manage all the app owners. Somebody has to even manage the developers to make sure that, okay, fine, you guys are doing work in the right environment versus the wrong one. So form a CCOE team. It could be anyone. It could be you guys. It could be somebody else. But have somebody else to orchestrate your migration. This helps because this helps in standardization, which I'll talk about later. So deliver some quick wins. Cloud migration. There was a slide which Shazwan had just shown about cost, right? So stakeholders always look at cost. They always look at, okay, what's costing me money right now, right? You're moving to the cloud. I'm also spending money on an extra team. I'm also spending money on XYZ. How are you ensuring that I'm able to get money's worth, right? The only way you can do that is by delivering quick wins, right? You build apps, move apps which are quicker to move, right? Of course, automate it, build the infrastructure, write the code if required, and then show it, hey, okay, we've done this. The more wins you get, the more buy-in you get from stakeholders. Because there have been stories I have read online of where companies have pulled the plug on a cloud migration midway because they feel some stakeholder feels that this is dangerous for them, or because they heard something in a social party or blah, whatever. Right, build reusable patterns. So Cloudformation is one of them. The other one is, have reference architectures. We built a lot of reference architectures. The only architecture we got wrong was about Singapore region. We should have actually taken Sydney region. But beyond that, everything else was all right. Our VPCs, the way we connected the data centers, all worked well. We did have this problem of physically having someone in the data center, but that's a different story. Engage and evangelize. How many of you have actually faced this problem where you're in your company, you're actually talking about the cloud and people shut you down? Right? How many of you have faced this across your career? I have. I don't know about the others. Maybe it means you guys work in much. Okay, you have. Oh no, you're scratching your head. Sorry. So my point is, you will always have naysayers. You'll always have folks who have negativity because of other reasons, right? It's not because they hate you. Most probably they don't. If they really do, then okay, you have some other problems. But the idea is that they may have faced some issues from before, they would have heard stories from before. So your idea is to engage with them and talk. And we did face that, I did face that initially. The idea was about building apps and moving them to the cloud and talking to the application owners. I used to do that on behalf of the CCOE team. Talk to the folks, tell them, okay, the cloud is good for XYZ reason. We also built a CI/CD pipeline. In fact, the best way to engage developers on going to the cloud is build a CI/CD pipeline. Hands down, it'll just win them over. They're like, you just automated half of my life, awesome, right? And here's a kicker for this whole thing. How many of you actually use Lambdas to manage your infrastructure? One? That's it? Wow. I saw a lot of hands on AWS. How do you guys manage your policies and stuff then? Okay. This is how we do it in Randstad. If that's one takeaway you guys take, it'll be pretty good. We have instance tag compliance. I've obfuscated some of the things just to get you an idea. But this is known as a red mail we send to people. So what we do is we need to standardize our tags on EC2s. Anyone knows why we need to use tags on EC2s? Why does it help? Yep, exactly. So cost management. One of the things we do is because we don't have a separate DevOps team, developers can spin up their machines, right? It is doable. But because of that, developers, once they spin up the machine, they forget to clean up their mess, right? So what we do instead is we have Lambdas sitting around, who look for compliance. So the first thing you need to do is you need to tag it properly. We have a list of a Google spreadsheet, I think, which we use with the APIs, where we check, okay, is this app server which you've built against an actually acknowledged app, right? Beyond that, we also see timings. We see whether this app is supposed to be running in a certain time or not. We do a lot of checks behind the scenes on the EC2 tags. And based on that, if we have a problem, we'll actually shut it down. So we send out in the email, we tell you what the problem is in the tags. And then we say, if you don't correct this in the next 4 days, we're going to bring it down. And we do bring it down. And people complain. But I don't care because we need to save money, right? And this works. I mean, we've never had any issues with this. In fact, it's been a little too strict even with me for that matter. And I can't control it sometimes. But yeah. The other thing you can do is start and stop EC2s, like I mentioned. So cost is one thing. What we do at our places, we use mostly on demand. We don't do reserved instances. And one of our tags actually mentions the work hours. So anytime after business hours, if the tag mentions, okay, you can shut down this machine after 8 o'clock, we have a Lambda which is triggered by a CloudWatch event every 5 minutes. And then it shuts down the image and then starts it again, right? This is why I'm surprised nobody does this because, yeah. Other reasons. I would have preferred reserved, yes. But there, I know, yeah, exactly. But there are other reasons, like global. It's strange. I don't know, some relationship with costing and all that. But I agree, yes, it should be reserved compute. Believe me, because we are in this for the long run, right? But beyond that, yes, so we do shut down. And by the way, if you guys want to know what we do in Lambda, we use what's that? We use one of the serverless frameworks. I forgot which one. It's been some time since I wrote it. Okay, I'll tell you when I get it. Yeah, sorry. We also do IAM access key rotation. This is pretty new. This is something we did recently. How many of you actually use IAM access keys for other apps to communicate with the EC2s? Right. So one of the things we have as a strict policy is that it's a 90-day policy on any IAM access key. If any external app is using the access key to access any AWS resource, we recycle the key and we send out an email. And if you don't update that, we check the code, the timestamp against the key. If you don't update it, then we terminate the other key so that it fails and then you miserably feel bad for the rest of the day. This works. I mean, again, it's CloudWatch and immersion. So for anyone who hasn't tried this, I'll tell you one thing. AWS Lambda is the language for infrastructure, right? Use it to control your infrastructure. You'll get a lot of benefits. And definitely it's a lot of fun when you have scripts running around just doing stuff on your command, right? It's like having an army of lemmings or something. If anyone knows what lemmings is, sorry. All right, so what's next? Okay, we did this. We overshot our timeline because of the Singapore-Sydney region, so our CEO forgave us, which is cool. And we moved to the cloud totally with the database in Feb 2018. We shut down a data center in June 2018, I think, 2018 or June. And we're good. Now we are totally data center free. Yay! So what happens after you move to the cloud, right? What's the next story? What goes beyond that? Of course, if you noticed, one of the things I didn't talk about is re-architecting the app, right? What we did was a lift and shift model. We took an app, we took an EC2 instance, we dumped it inside, and then we moved ahead. Why? Because we had stakeholders engaging with us, and we didn't have time to recreate the apps again. Now we are actually started the journey of rewriting these apps. So the next step, come on. All right, event stream processor 2.0. It's a little technical. I debated whether to add this in or not, but I thought, okay, hell, what the hell? I'll do it. We have an event processor, event stream processor already in place, which has been there for like the last 3-4 years. It's written in C#. And we thought, hey, okay, what's the best way to scale this out? Because we are expanding in business and we use a lot of events which drive a lot of business workflows. And we thought, okay, let's use an event stream, right? And use a service orchestrator. The idea is that you dump events in a queue, and then afterwards you have workers working off the queue, and they will call other APIs, business APIs, and they keep moving ahead. And the idea was also to use a data lake because we are in recruitment. So we want to enrich the data, right? We have candidate profiles, we have client profiles, we want to do matching, which we do, candidate matching and stuff. I'm not sure if any of you know, but in recruitment, people do a lot of automation for candidate matching, right? So if you are not getting a job, just do your resume better. Just do it. Yeah. You see the resume parser? Yeah, that's one of them. So everyone uses the resume parser, if you didn't know that. Our initial idea when we did the cloud migration, because we were so gung-ho on AWS at that time, and everyone said, okay, just use AWS, was to use Kinesis, right? Who uses Kinesis over here? Anyone? Okay. It's painful. It's because it's not a fully managed service, right? I mean, we tried this a lot. We tried this during our cloud migration. We did POCs. And the only thing that kept coming up is, okay, we're already having so much pain in spinning up so many EC2s. We have to still spin up more nodes and manage the firehose. The other problem was with the firehose because you need a client library, and it was at that time only written in Java. I'm not sure if it is written in some other language right now. So this is our architecture which we wanted to work towards. But after the cloud migration, the first thing we learned, our most painful lesson, we hate managing our own machines. Managed services. Google comes in. Google says, hey, you don't need to spin up anything. Just click on a button and then you spin up everything for us. We'll manage most of it. If you notice, except for data flow, everything else is just you don't have to even know how many nodes are running behind the scenes. So what we do right now is, this is actually in production, and we are starting to roll this out to other places. The idea is that we use PubSub as a queue, and we use events inside, and we use data flow as a stream processor, which then triggers it in BigQuery. We use BigQuery as a data lake because we feel that cloud storage and BigQuery's cost in terms of storage is almost similar. It's just that you pay more if you're going to query more data. And SQL's, Amazon's Athena isn't a very strong offering yet. So we thought BigQuery makes sense. Beyond that, enrichment layer, I mean, I'm sure most of the guys here would agree that currently Google has a lot of machine learning offerings, which are pretty strong out of the box. Of course, when you want to custom make it, then I don't see much of a difference between AWS and Google. But yeah. So why I wanted to show this is, once you move to the cloud, you actually start getting this buffet kind of a style, right? You start seeing, okay, there are other options here and other options there. How do you do that? You can't lock yourself into a cloud. So one lesson, if you want to take from this whole talk, if it's anything, is just this: multi-cloud is the future, right? So you would want to be on multiple clouds depending on what services you want to use. You just need to make sure how you're going to share data across services. This is just an event pipeline. So all we do is we just pass events into Google. But beyond that, I don't know, maybe we would actually share more data across if required. And with that, I'll end my talk. I just wanted to put this in. It's a shameless plug. So I'm also an organizer for Google Cloud Developer Community. Even though I do AWS on my daytime, I do this in my other time. So the idea is that as a community, we hold meetups, we do workshops. And next month, we are doing 2 workshops, study jams basically. One is on deploying applications on Google, using Google App Engine and all. So if anyone who's interested is trying to get into the DevOps space, or do you have a team who you want to level up, you could come for that. The other study jam is on Kubernetes exclusively. So if you really want to get into Kubernetes, like everyone is saying, okay, we don't understand it or XYZ, I would say that's the best study jam to come into. If even after that you don't understand, it's fine, no problem. Kubernetes is hard. Because just to answer that, Kubernetes for me, when I read it and I understood it, it's like spinning up your own data center in a data center. That's what Kubernetes is. It gives you everything out of the box of running a data center, which is why it takes time for you to spin up a cluster the first time. At least 10, 20 minutes. So that's me, that's it. Thank you very much, and appreciate you guys hearing this. Questions?
Yeah. Thanks very much. Now that you've managed to finish your migration and decommission your data centers, have you managed to do any retrospective on TCOs of data centers versus cloud?
Yes, we did. So what used to happen, one of the things was human resource, right? The cost of human resource, managing these servers and and the feedback time of getting anything done, that became faster because everything's on the click, right? So you could just provision a server whenever you need to. You don't need to actually order infrastructure, because we are a traditional company. We're not an IT company, right? So for us, seeing that itself was a big jump ahead. And the idea was that because now it's a global initiative, we could have a team which doesn't have to be on the ground in Sydney, and they could manage multiple regions, which is what we do right now. We have a team which is sitting in Netherlands, which manages a lot of the infrastructure for us. So what they do is they give us developers just the choice, okay, fine, you have this account, you have everything inside, you can play around, you can do whatever, but you have to look at cost and all this stuff. So that's one. The second thing was we had this issue of security. So AWS handles a lot of the security, at least for getting into the data center. This is being recorded, so I won't say much about it, but you can talk offline about security, what actually happened in our data center once. And I think that, in fact, that security breach that happened tipped the scale for going to the cloud immediately. In fact, it was a decision which was unanimous after that. So yes, there was a cost against that. If you say there are cons for it, yes, it is. It's because it's not your infrastructure. You don't own it. And if any day AWS comes in, pulls the plug, then you're screwed, right? But AWS is, we assume and we hope AWS is too big to fail and too big to do that. And I mean, that's all I would say from a cost perspective as of now, at least. But yes, like Shazwan said, right? We use on-demand instances. Definitely reserved instances make a lot of sense, but there were other reasons why we had to go for that. I'm sure there's a retrospective happening for this year to see how we can reduce the cost. Maybe one of the things would be about compute. So yeah. Feedback.
Not really, two questions.
No, I mean the mic.
Oh, okay, right. So the first one is, how much support did you get from the AWS side in terms of like moving your stuff over into AWS? So I know they have solutions architects working for AWS, and I was wondering, like, so it sounded like you guys did a lot of the stuff by yourself. I'm curious how much support did AWS offer, and how did that work with your teams?
It's funny you asked that. I don't want to actually touch on the topic. What actually happened with us was we had a AWS account manager, even though we are in the enterprise plan. And a lot of times when we used to raise questions, it used to be, like for example, this thing about Sydney and Singapore, right? We don't have VPC peering until recently. And they were never clear to us whether it's coming or not. And they used to always keep us in the dark. But I wouldn't say it's an AWS thing. I would say maybe it's a region thing, because what had happened is when we had just started our cloud migration, Sydney as a region had just started in the beginning of 2016, I think. It was a new region when we had started, and they had just set up an office over there. So the account manager was a little bit, I don't know, he didn't know things or stuff like that. So a lot of times we used to actually ping. I mean, it's our account manager. We have to go through them. So we used to try to get somebody locally, like from Singapore. That didn't work always for us. Beyond that, if there was anything inside AWS's data center we needed help with, yes, they were ready to help. But a lot of the solutions we actually designed it ourselves. Yes.
From a more technical point, say for example, like deciding what instances to run, whether they're large instances or those all you guys did yourself, I'm assuming.
There was discussion with AWS for that, because here's the thing, right? So even if you do reserved instances or on-demand instances, it's not a type against the resource. I mean, it's not a type against the EC2 instance. It's just a billing concept. So our billing doesn't actually go according to the standard costing of EC2s, right, because it's an enterprise, it's a special global thingy which they have done for us. So from a costing perspective, it's definitely different. We don't pay the cost which a usual company, if they take the plan, would do. Definitely there are discounts for sure. I mean, if you're as big as Randstad, I mean, yeah. But yes, I mean, I think what we did, because here's the funny thing, right? Reserved instances as a concept was raised at that time also. But we went with on-demand, like I said, for other stuff. So, yeah.
Follow up regarding to your multi-cloud thing, right? So we're saying that multi-cloud is the future, right? One of the most expensive costs right now within cloud in general is egress bandwidth.
Yes.
How are you thinking about that with regards to like moving data between clouds? Unit cost, right?
It's a good question. I don't have an answer because we haven't thought a lot, which is why when we did this, we said we'll go small first. So events made sense. We don't want to replicate everything. Just having events going through for ingress into GCP made sense, and we just paying for the egress cost from AWS, right? That's all we're doing right now. And we, because we're going a little slow on that, AWS is always reducing costs every few months. So that kind of is helping our plan. We haven't got, we've seen our builds recently. Okay, this thing went into production like in December. I think it's been 3 months already, and we've been analyzing the builds, and it looks all right. It's manageable. It's also because not everything is passing events into our system yet. It's just some components. So for sure we'll get. In fact, in that whole architecture of GCP, the most expensive component is data flow. Unfortunately, I don't know why. 350 euros I'm paying just for that. Yeah, we are. So we're not egressing out of GCP now anyway. Yeah. Thanks. That's why I like meetups. So thanks for that. Definitely, I think it's going to hit us when it does. But like I said, initially we were just seeing about egress costs from AWS out. But yeah, good one. Thanks. That's it. Anyone? All right, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Right. Thanks, Faz. So usually I'm pretty strict on time, but since the next one is me, I don't really care. And usually between the two talks, we have a break and a job ads. So I'm going to like run the job ads now quickly. If anyone wants to advertise their job, they're hiring, the company is hiring, you can come and advertise. Yes.
It's not a job ad, but so I've been playing around with Terraform recently, and I found that their support for Lightsail is really bad. Like Terraform's AWS library for Lightsail, specifically for Lightsail is really bad. So I'm trying to actually extend it right now. So I'm looking for anyone who has experience playing around with Terraform and specifically extending Terraform libraries. Like the hashing form. Yeah, anyone who knows, this is not a job ad, it's just I'm looking for someone to like work with because Lightsail is the cheapest option for hosting in AWS right now, so I think it would be useful for the whole community. Yeah, so just have to find him.
That's Ashrik, you can find him on Slack. Anyone hiring?
Anyone hiring or wants a job?
Hello, Michael Liao from Moneyline. So we want to run a bank in the US. Come join us. Looking for DevOps people.
No? On the Slack group, there is also a jobs channel where we advertise there. So join and check. It's not DevOps specific, but it's IT jobs. Right. So the next speaker is me. I'm introducing myself. My name is Shazwan. By day, I'm a developer, but very, very recently, like 1 month plus, I think, I moved to DevOps. I guess because my employers see me organizing these DevOps meetups and offered me, do you want to half of the time you manage infra and half the time you code and then see what can be automated, basically the DevOps culture. So I said, yeah, why not? No, but there are other perks. Yeah. So usually I don't talk, but this meetup we only got one volunteer speaker. I desperately needed another, but nobody came up. So I decided to talk about something that I believe most of us use, and zoom it a bit on what we use often. Like, how many of you here have never used Docker? See, everybody uses Docker. Docker, how many of you use Docker for development locally? Like, literally everybody, right? my point. So Docker init. So when you run Docker locally, you use Docker run, right? So the TLDR of this talk is basically you just add dash init. Thank you. Right, so what is it? Anyone here doesn't know what Docker is? Okay, good, good. So Wikipedia defines init as in Unix-based computer operating systems. It's the first process started during booting of the computer system. Init is a daemon process that continues running until the system is shut down. It basically is process identifier 1. So if you have been doing Docker for some time, eventually on the internet or GitHub issue or somewhere, you will find this PID one. So this is what it's about init. Like, who cares, right? Yes, thank you. Right. So zombies use resources. If kernel process table fails, it will be impossible to create new processes. What is a zombie? Can anybody help me? Swimming, what is a zombie?
It doesn't eat brain. That's what it is.
Yes.
It eats processes that die but not does. It's a dangling process. Yeah.
It's a dangling process. So your process finished, but it wasn't cleaned up. Eventually, if it runs for long enough, then you will not be able to create new processes. Like if you use Docker for development, I doubt you will encounter this problem because you usually know it won't run long enough. And you say you only run one service per container. Yeah, but that's not really the usual case, right? The real case, you usually run a lot of services inside one container. It's not the Docker way, but it's the practical way a lot of people use it. Yeah. So within it, I mean, the container way, you are supposed to run only one. Suppose you have a website, so you have let's say PHP, and then you have Nginx, a web server. That's already two, and then who knows? You also have database. You run inside the same container as well. Yeah. So now you have 3 services inside one container. Whatever. But even if you run one service, are you sure the service you run doesn't spawn new processes? Is it really your code? Did you audit it? And how many of you have written custom init scripts? 1, 2, 3, 4, like, half of people here have written custom init scripts. It's the script that your container runs first, and then to do initialization, cleanup, and whatnot. So when do you use init? When you need proper signal handling from your host machine. Like, have you ever tried running a Docker service and then you want to terminate it? You Control-C, but it doesn't, right? If you downloaded a random image or run someone else's image, like for example, you run a service, like say a long unit test, which I did once, but then you realize that you ran the wrong folder and it's going to take like 3-4 minutes to wait until it finish. You Control-C frantically, but nothing happens. So yeah, of course you can open another terminal and then kill -98, but it's less dramatic then. And then you have long-running service that potentially spawns many children that eventually will become zombies. Usually, people overestimate open source projects. Not all of them are managed well. They are like, if you use something that spawns children like PHP, FPM, one I can think of. And then if you run more than one service, that you need to care about restarts. Like the example before, you have web server and DB. If your DB dies, then something needs to restart it. So basically, you have like, if you're familiar with Linux, you have something like supervisor. And then if you need exit code forwarding, that the services you run crash and you want your main PID one to know about the exit code and then to tell you on the host machine. I know some of you said, Bash can adopt orphans, so zombies problem solved. If you didn't know, Bash can do that. But most people I see online, usually they run Bash like this with Docker run, and then you have Bash, and then you have a single command here. If you do it this way, then your zombies will not be ripped. It will not be managed properly, because you see the container is actually exec into, it's basically just run PS as a PID1, PID1, PS. This PS can be your app, your script that starts your whole app. So does your script handle, cleanup of zombies, signal forwarding, like I talked just now? Most likely not. So this is the same thing, but you run more than one command. Then you have Bash as PID1. So your zombies problem is solved. Just small difference, but big difference. But even though you solve your zombies problem with Bash, it doesn't do signal forwarding by default. So that's another, why you need. And also similar to the point before, unreliable exit code. So the one of the commands here might, or services that you run with Bash might crash with different exit code, but your Docker will receive 0 exit code. It didn't forward. So 0 means okay, so probably it will mess up with your Docker restart policy if you have it. So things that are supposed to restart, not restarted. Yeah. So these are for the people who said they wrote their init scripts. It's basically probably something like this. You have a script that you start as PID1, you run with Bash, and then you trap the signals, the hang up, interrupt, quit, terminate, error, and then your cleanup function will do stuff. Please don't do this unless you are really super familiar with Linux, Unix. And then we have Fusion. I'm sure a few years ago, a lot of you, before Alpine, a lot of you used Fusion-based image. So even they wrote their own 400 lines of init script in Python. Like, I can scroll, but it's going to take 3 days. So yes, just stop. So these are the init options that you have. Disclaimer, I'm not familiar with most of this. Like I said, my day job is a developer, so most likely, if you think I'm wrong, most likely I'm wrong. Feel free to correct me, just interrupt and say you're wrong. What? If you squint, you can like... So I'm just going to pick these three, tiny, dumb init, and S6. So time feels like really slow when you're talking. So tiny is a really, really small init script. So Docker Engine was using Grimes as their init script until late 2016 when they adopted Tiny as of this version. early 2017, but it's not running by default. I don't know why. Because images without Tiny will work with Tiny without any code change, zero config. Like I said in the TLDR, you just dash in it, and then you have Tiny. So I really don't know why it's not the default. So use it. This is the part you can see in the source where Tiny is included. Before that, it was Grimes. I'm not sure what's wrong with Grimes. I couldn't find the repo anymore. It doesn't exist. So this is an example of Tiny in action. This is how you normally run it, right? Without the dash in it. This is what you will see. Your PID one is, you go into the container and then you run PS, and then you will see that the first is SH, PID one is SH. But you run with init, then you see the difference. Your PID one is now the init script. Simple. If you use Compose, you have to use version 2.2, and then there are two ways to do it. Either you say init true, then it will use the embedded, the bundle script, which is Tiny. Or the second method is you specify your own init if you have other preference. So this is how you make it default, because in case someone forgot to set the init flag or put it in the compose. So just basically put Tiny as the entry point of your image. And dump init is another alternative. The second one that I want to talk about is by Yelp. I forgot what company Yelp is, but it's popular, right? Yeah. What does it do? Someone? Food review. Yeah. So this is how you install it. You have it as entry point, simple stuff. So Tiny or dump init, both of them are super small. You will be fine with either. Like compile static is much smaller. I think one of them is below 200k kilobyte, but even normal compilation both below 1 meg, which is super small for an init system. But if you need signal rewrite, use dump init. Signal rewrite is basically you want to you receive a signal, maybe 137, but then you want to forward, but you rewrite it as another code, then use dump init. If you need sub ripping, so we talked about zombies and ripping, right? But zombies can have children. They can nest. So the nested sub ripping is not handled by dump init. I don't know why, but it's handled by Tiny. So if you need sub ripping, use Tiny. If you have no clue, you will do fine with either. Just use it. So the third one and the final one is S6 overlay. It's something I like when I need to do more than what Tiny offers. It's by Scarnet. So it divides the initialization and even the cleanup by stages. First, you have the setup of S6, and then it will run your users files, fix your ownership and permission. Basically, you write your scripts, and then you put it in certain folder structure, and S6 will run them. And it even supports services that it will restart, like the case just now. If you have DB dies, and then it will restart PFP, FPM, it will restart Nginx as service, it will restart. And then it also does shutdown and clean up. You can put your scripts in the container finish.d directory, and it will send a sig term followed by sig kill after grace period, all of which are configurable by environment variable. and S6 is about 3 megabyte uncompressed, which is not so much of a difference than dumb init or tiny. So this is an example of installing it. Basically, you download the release version you want, and then you unpack it in your image at the root. Then set it as your entry point. That's it. You can see this is the S6 stage 1 just now. I just doing stuff, and then this is the fixed permissions, because if you use Docker locally, you always have permission problem, right? If no, like you apparently need to, your user needs to be www data or nobody, no, stuff like this that you can put in your fixed attributes directory. It has its own syntax, the account and the permissions. And you can see when I press Ctrl C, it detects 130. 130 is the special code for Ctrl C termination, and then it executes the cleanup scripts in this folder, but nothing there, so nothing happened, and then finish. Simple but elegant. This is the folder structure. This is an example, a simple example. If you run Apache, so during container initialization, it will enable module. This is just a simple shell script. You run A2 and mod something, right? Just an example. And then you disable something for development, op cache. You don't want caching for development. And then in the finish, you have a cleanup script. And then for fixed attributes, you have www that will change owner of your www data folder. And then you have services that will run PHP FPM with the run script, also shell script. This is the example content I said just now, like Apache modules. You basically just enable modules and you disable op cache. I'm not going to touch about this, it's not so important now. So this is basically, no, forget it. Then clean up. This is the format syntax of fixed attributes. Basically, you tell the path, and then whether to recursively set the permission or not, and then the account and the fallback if the account is not found, the file permission and the directory permission. So for like Apache, var www.html, recurse through, set everything to www data. If not available, then set to 1001. And then for directories, set this permission. For file, this permission. For directories, this permission. Simple. You can have as many as those. So it solves your permission problem. Yeah, basically what I just said. Yeah, and then services. This is where you put all your services, PHP, MySQL, whatever you have. The main thing is you have to run them as a foreground process, not as a background process, because S6 will monitor. If the process stop running, then it will restart. No. But yeah, I'm not demonstrating the best practice, but more like the the use cases. Like it can be anything other than PHP FPM here. If you need to run multiple services in a container, which is not a good practice, right? And one thing to note here is using exact line. Be instead of shell. Don't be afraid with. I'll explain that later. Yeah, basically with this, no environment is passed. It's super lightweight. Instead of shell has a lot of overhead. I'll talk about it later. And just now we have a run script, right? It also has a finish script. Like this one, it will stop the services, stop all services this dash T is terminate all services if PHP FPM crash. The exit code is not 0 or not 256 and it is an error. So just abort everything. So your container will die. It will not be restarted. PHP FPM will not be restarted. 2 more minutes. Yes. Other features. So drop privileges. This is something like GoSu or SUExec. If you know, it's dangerous to run your container as root. You shouldn't do it. It's bad practice. You should drop the privilege as soon as you have done with your root stuff. Yes, sir. With Docker user, then you right off the bat you start with that user, but some yes. That is if you have your image built already. Yeah. Whenever you need it, in whatever case you need to drop privilege or you need to start off as root, do something, and you didn't pre-build the image. It's one way to do it. And then container environment can be passed around with this. So instead of using user bin sh or bash, you use this if you need your container information that pass in compose in the environment field or by -e. Or you can pass the environment config as script env and then basically you always have your environment variable. S6 is really particular about environment variable. It thinks that you shouldn't have access to your environment variable if you don't need it. Yeah, this is one gotcha. If anyone here have tried S6 before? Right. So S6, as you know, Docker runs as root, right? So S6 will, if you mount your scripts folder, the container init, blah blah blah, those folders will be changed to owner root after you run the container. So every time you have to manually change it back if you need. I'm talking about if you like doing testing locally. So you always have, or CI, your CI will always fail to remove the folder because your CI is not root, doesn't have, no? Yes. Yes, but mount as a read only. Yeah, I know, but that's one way. But then you have to. I have tried this, but I don't remember why it didn't work. Yeah. So the easiest solution is just to pass this. Well, yes, this pass this environment. So then S6 instead of copy using the mounted folder, it will copy the stuff into its own container folder. So your no permission issues. And this is why exec is good compared to shell. It's not interesting really. So thanks. No questions, right? Okay. So thank you, everyone. Next DevOps meetup, I hope I will see your faces again. It will be most likely at, is Hussein here from Maxis? No? Okay. So I was supposed to meet him to discuss about the next meetup. It's probably going to be at Maxis Academy in Plaza Central. And we have one speaker from Experian and one from YTL, right? Yeah, he just volunteered just now. So I hope you guys come. And usually after the meetup, some of us who have nothing better to do will go down, and across the street there's a mama. So I invite you guys who also have nothing better to do to, some networking and chit chat. And can I request a picture session, group picture in front? Thank you.